everybody. I'm Mike Levy, and welcome back to the Velo podcast. Now, this coming Sunday is a pretty darn special day, and it's not because it's National Scrabble Day, although that one counts. It's also not because it's National Peach Cobbler Day, which should be a paid holiday, but it isn't. Now, as most of you know, it's because this Sunday is the 122nd edition of the Paris-Roubaix. And if the racing that we've already had this season is anything to go by, it's going to be an absolute banger. So to unpack this, I've got European editor Andrew Hood, aka Hoodie, and UK-based editor Jim Cotton with me, because both of these guys, they've forgotten more about the classics than I will ever know. So today, we're going to talk about all things Paris-Roubaix. Like, what makes it so sketchy and why is it everybody's favorite monument? Why did this thing end in an old cement velodrome? And why don't they just fix those shitty roads already? Uh, but we're also going to talk about the favorites. We're going to talk about the outsiders. We're going to talk about the wild cards. And we're also going to talk about some first timer named Tadej Pogačar. But before we get to that, Hoodie, I want to start with you. When you hear Paris-Roubaix, what do you think of?
I think of cold, muddy, nasty. I think of really bad French coffee, actually, as well. I think of probably the greatest one-day bike race that's been known to the sport. I mean, this is just beyond the norm. I think Jim wrote in his piece today, if they introduced a race like this today, it would be not allowed. This is from another era. It's a crazy race. It's unlike anything we see today. So for me, this is it's one of those sit on the couch, break out, get the popcorn going, and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it's one of those races that you could sit down and you could watch some races, and if you show it to like a normal road bike race to a non-cyclist friend of yours, they're like, oh, those guys are going pretty good. But if you show them like video of a muddy Paris-Roubaix, it's like, oh, like what are those guys doing? Like, that's anybody can appreciate how gnarly this is. Jim, what about you? What is your favorite Paris-Roubaix memory?
Well, I would agree with everything Hoodie just said, in that it is like 6.5 hours of just pure thrills. But the thing that always stands out, the thing that I always think about with Roubaix is I've always got this image in my head of when Peter Sagan bunny hopped over Fabian Cancellara on the cobbles about 10 years ago. Just like the most insane kind of piece of bike handling. It just encapsulates the chaos of that race. Like, one guy falls over on these stupid cobblestones, somebody else just bunny hops over him like it's a mountain bike race or something. It's just craziness.
Yeah, that's classic Paris-Roubaix. Like when I think of that action, I think of like it's it's Paris-Roubaix, like expect the unexpected would be probably the way to put it. Hoodie, what about you? If you think back, you've been covering this race for a long, long time. What is your favorite Paris-Roubaix memory, or at least one that stands out to you?
Yeah, there are plenty. I mean, it's been a race that I have gone to quite a few times. I think the best memory for me really was I was just looking right now on my iPhone trying to remember the year. I think it's 2018. I'm not great with years and dates. Apologies. The year that Peter Sagan won Roubaix. I was with my colleague James Start. He's a photographer, so we were together in the car the whole day, just skipping and hopping and skipping ahead of the race and just seeing them go by. Because typically in a race, you'll go to the start as a journalist, at least you go to the start, in a race like Roubaix, you might go out there and kind of watch the first sectors at Troisville. And then normally we have to really bust to get to the finish line in time for the race. But with James Start, we have with the photographer credentials, so we could actually go on the course. And that day, I think we ended up seeing maybe 4 or 5 sectors of the race. And it was just incredible. Sagan was there. Sylvain Dillier was with him, I think, in the breakaway. But I do remember the one scene at one of the Mons Pévelet sectors. That's really when Sagan made his real acceleration to win the race. Just absolute pandemonium there on the roads. We got to car 4, and then we drove like madmen to try to get back to the velodrome in time for the race. But there was a train crossing closure on the York course route. So we're all sitting there waiting. The sport directors are there, the Swannies, a lot of the team mechanics are all rushing to try to get to the race. And we were stuck there for 10 minutes. And then, of course, Jim, he's a photographer, James Start. He has to be there to get the shot. I can watch the replay, but he has to be there. And so finally the thing lifted. We drove like madmen. We plowed up into the back of the velodrome, ran through the entrance, and we literally got Sagan coming across the line on the last half lap on the velodrome. And then just to see him post up, that was probably the coolest moments of my Roubaix experience.
That's it though, isn't it? Like another classic like Paris-Roubaix memory where like it's a bit of chaos. Like it didn't go how it was supposed to go, right? Because it's never gonna happen like that. Uh, for my memory, I was gonna pick Sonny Corbelli's win in 2021 because it was super muddy. And to me, like, I mean, obviously, I don't know, I haven't followed this race for as long as you guys have, but to me, I mean, the Hell of the North is supposed to look like the Hell of the North. So that one, when those guys, you see them, like their faces are just like plastered, and the only thing you see is the whites of the eyes and the whites of the teeth. That's classic. But I'm gonna have to say my favorite Paris-Roubaix memory is when Alison Jackson won. She's Canadian. That's part of it. I don't actually know her, but we ended up before she won Paris-Roubaix the summer before, we ended up on a gravel ride together. Just friends of a friend, and I got us lost, and it ended up being 12-hour. It was a 6-hour hike. We weren't supposed to do any hiking. There's 6 hours of hiking in this ride. It ended up being 12 hours, and she was such a good sport. She was so nice. So, and then she went on to win Paris-Roubaix. So for me, I think I'm always going to be a fan. That's always going to be my favorite memory. So, um, guys, when I think of Paris-Roubaix, obviously everybody, including me, is going to think of the cobbles. These things are the old ancient farm roads. Pretty, you've been there lots of times. Can you describe what these things are like? Like, this isn't just rough, shitty road, is it? What makes the cobbles the cobbles?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think cobblestone is almost a misnomer because, cobblestones are like rounded, smooth, almost like giant pebbles, rocks, or stones, of course, that are, laid into like, an urban road. These are like more like granite cut blocks, right? They're like jagged edged. There's mortar filled in between. So, even the stone part of the cobblestone is very rough, much rougher than at the Tour of Flanders or we see sometimes at some of the other Northern Classic races. And again, these races are contested on these old farm roads that were built back in the 19th century. And most of them have been, of course, paved over, replaced by asphalt and cement and whatnot. But, a few of these roads, remained up there in northern France. It's kind of a poor agriculture area. So I think some of the, more modern road building efforts by the French government just arrived a little bit later. So when they started racing across these roads, it was almost kind of the norm. Like back in the day in 1910, a lot of these roads were like this. But as Europe became more modern, they started paving these roads, taking out these cobbles, but these roads have stayed there, and they haven't really changed that much, to be honest. Because most of the year, no one drives on them. Normally, it's they're just used by farm equipment, big trucks. Used to be ox carts. I do remember driving like an old Peugeot 106 across these things, doing like a recon one year. Totally destroyed that rental car. I turned it back and just left the key in the key box and got the heck out of there because that car was completely wrecked.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, have you ever ridden the cobbles?
I've not ridden them, but well, I think luckily, but I have seen
Yeah.
them up close, and yeah, like Hoodie said, until you see them, you don't really appreciate just like how atrocious they are. Because in a lot of cases, all these big farm machines have like sort of ground away at like the sort of cement in between the stones and things, so that like there's like an inch gap between some of them, and there's this Twitter X account where they kind of measure how deep the cobblestones are by stacking Oreos kind of next to them. And I think on the Arenberg Trench, the Tree d'Arenberg, you can get like 4 stacked Oreos like in the gaps in between. Like that's how much they stick out. And yeah, I don't think I would dare ride a bike across them. I'm not brave or strong or skilled enough, to be honest.
Likewise, likewise. If you zoom in on these cobbles too, they're all different. It's not like if you're on a gravel road, on your road bike or a gravel bike, you look ahead, you see the gravel. When you look at these cobbles, they're not consistent. That's one thing I've also noticed. There's no like long, like good line. It's always changing, it's always rough. They're not the same shape, they're at different heights, there's different edges. Um, so one thing that has always struck me with a race like this, these guys are going to be out there for well, last year they came in just under 6 hours, but basically 6 hours. The toll, 30 sectors, 55 something kilometers, I think, the toll that takes on the body. So, Hoodie, if you're a racer and you're coming out these sectors, how do the racers approach these? Are they just hitting them as hard as they can? Does that make it easier or better? What are they doing?
Yeah, there's a couple of techniques that the more experienced riders will try to tell the younger guys. First, the faster you go, the easier they are to handle, right? It's just like you're floating more across the top of the cobbles.
Like whoops,
The,
kind of.
yeah, yeah, you're just trying to, exactly. You're just trying to go as fast as you can. It might need seem counterintuitive, but it's like anything. The faster you go, the more, the smoother the ride will be. And plus, there's like on these roads, there's kind of like a crown or almost
Yeah.
like a crest, especially where the big heavy farm equipment would go and the two kind of trenches almost. And so the top of the cobbles in the middle of the road is a little bit elevated, a little bit maybe rougher, but kind of a smoother line. And they say everyone that's generally where you can get a faster, cleaner line on that crest of the of these roads, depending on which sector you're on. And then of course, they'll put in like at the Arenberg, they'll put in the grandstands now, the fencing right down onto the cobble sectors because a lot of years riders were riding just on the dirt lane next to a little
This
track
sounds
next
like
to
a
the
good
cobble.
plan.
So they're like, that's not quite how we want to have it look during the race. So some of these bigger sectors will have fencing, and then plus there's so many people on the big sectors that the riders have to ride basically on the pave.
Yeah. I was watching the 2021 highlights and the crown. When it gets super muddy, the crown is quite pronounced. And I was watching guys, they'll be like, it looks like they're right in the middle. And as soon as they get off the crown a little bit, it's so slippery that the back tires just slide right out. Like they're literally losing it in a straight line. Crazy, craziness.
The thing about like the restricted number of lines is that every sector, like the tarmac run into every sector is basically like a lead out. Like that's what makes the race so intense, like because every team is trying to position their leader sort of in the first few positions into the cobblestone sectors. So for the most harsh sectors, you get teams like really upping the pace with like the leader on their wheels so they can get in on the best line, which is partly why the race is like so intense all day long.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a very different race to some others where, some of them, depending on the year, they could be, relatively speaking, somewhat calm up until a point where, almost everybody knows something is going to happen. It's going to go down. Where the Paris-Roubaix is more like everybody is just killing themselves to get their team out of the way of danger. And the way to do that is, of course, be at the front because if you're a possible winner, you don't want to get caught up behind any carnage. So yeah. Um, the one thing I want to ask about years ago, I mean, even in the 90s and the early 2000s, we used to see full suspension of road bikes. We used to see all sorts of weird things. Setup wise, Hoodie, what are the guys doing to their bikes these days? Is there anything strange?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. I mean, back in the day, we did see some funky things. Yeah, even some suspension. There were some of the risers in the seats. Some guys were even trying to ride with um, with seat a cushion like seated cushions, So, but it never really works. But yeah, I mean,
No.
the way that the bikes have been advancing so well. I was just talking the other day to Pogacar's mechanic, and they said they're basically running his Tour of Flanders bike, just going to run 32s instead of 30s. And that's it. There's nothing else that's different. I mean, the wheels, the carbon wheels these days, can just absorb so much of that punishment. But, that I even asked about the, bar tape. Are you going to run extra bar tape? That's kind of like the most basic hack that you guys are still doing out there. And they said, no, Pogacar doesn't want extra bar tape because he said it changes his grip. And he says that, any sort of like tweak like that, Pogacar doesn't like to make those for specific races. So he's just going to run the same setup he ran at Tour of Flanders.
Wow. Yeah, the part of me is pretty impressed by that because the bikes these days, for them to last over that, I mean, we see lots of flat tires and things like that. Do you guys know anything about riders using, this is mountain biker talking here, riders using tire inserts at an event like Paris-Roubaix? Do they do that?
Not that, not that I'm aware of. If I'm thinking along the same lines as you, I think like one of the main sort of technological like developments that's come in is just the fact that the as well as the wider tires, like Hoodie said, is that all the rims, the wheel rims, are just evolving to be a lot wider now, so they're a lot more sort of stable, a lot more kind of comfortable, and the frames are just getting that bit more compliant as well. So it means like riders don't really have to change much for Roubaix.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be on their aero bikes, I assume, but other than that, it'll mostly be just normal. No double chamois for these guys. These guys are tougher than us.
No stakes down the shorts like Merckx. Well, I think it was a Merckx. No, did I?
I
Is
mean,
that a true story?
Oh, I think they maybe use stakes to like heal sort of chafing or something. There's a story around about stakes down shorts. I might need to double check my facts.
Let me just put some uncooked cow on my open wounds down on my groin. See what happens.
old
Feel
school
like I can get some
remedies.
sort of infection. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, guys, obviously everybody's excited to see Pogačar race this thing. I read a stat online. I think he is the first current tour champion since 91 to race this thing, which is pretty cool. Uh, in my mind, like I personally want to see, my racers that I'm a fan of, like kind of do all the things, race all the things. But it hasn't been like that for many years. Hoodie, can you explain why we don't see tour champs racing this thing? I think it's fairly obvious, but
Yeah, you're right. I think the last defending tour winner to race Roubaix was Greg LeMond in 91. The last to win Roubaix as a defending tour champion was Bernard Hinault back in 1981. So that goes way back in the day. And it's just part of it's like, the inherent dangers of the race. You don't want to send your 66 kilo Grand Tour de France winner rattling over the pave. That's what makes, I think, Pogacar quite interesting is that even though he is a great climber and he is a great Grand Tour rider, obviously, he has that kind of all-around ability to race the one days. And, they say I asked the other day if he's coming in a little bit heavier to race Roubaix because I thought maybe the year he'd do it, he might kind of come in a kilo or two heavier. They said that
yeah.
he's not. They said he's coming in basically at his normal tour race weight, maybe a little bit heavier, but not, he didn't put on extra weight to take on the tour, take on the Paris-Roubaix. And it's like, just everything since the 90s, the tour has become so big and so important. So I think when a racer kind of developed into a Grand Tour rider, had that skill set to maybe win the Tour de France, it became such a paramount, all important goal for any team organization. They just did not want to dare send their star rider to a race like Roubaix, where, if you crash, you break a wrist, you break your leg, the tour could be in jeopardy. And so we saw that real transition in the 90s into the 2000s where the tour became bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the thing that the layman or the average sports fan understands, right? They know the Tour de France. So if you win everything in the whole season, you lose the Tour de France, that's what people are going to remember. So it's great to see Pogacar do this. There have been a few tour winners who've done it since, and I think Wiggins did it kind of at the tail end of his career, and I think Geraint Thomas maybe raced it once or twice before he won the tour. But yeah, it's very rare to see anybody from yellow jersey country go into the hell of the north. That's for sure.
Part of it as well is sorry, mate. Part of it as well is just they don't want to interrupt like their training kind of programs. Like you'll see, well, Vingegaard and Evenepoel have kind of been torpedoed by injury, but Roglic, for example, just races stage races, and he'll probably be at altitude now, and racing one day just doesn't fit into the big Tour de France picture, which, like Hoodie said, that's like the North Star of most riders' whole season.
Yeah. It underlines. I mean, we all know Pogi's pretty special, whether you're a fan or not. But it really underlines what he's doing or what he might do on Sunday, which would be absolutely amazing. Let's talk about the men first before we talk about the women's race on Saturday. The list of possible contenders isn't that long if it plays out how people sort of expect it to play out. Van der Poel, Mads Pedersen, obviously, Ganna would love to avenge his flat tire from last year, and I think everybody would be pretty happy if Wout pulled it off. It'd be a good story. It'd be a feel-good story. Guys, how are any of these people going to beat Pogi? How is anybody going to beat UAE?
I would say the first thing, and I hate to say it, is if Pogacar crashes or gets hurt, but obviously that's not the way anybody wants to see the race won. The second way I would think is if it's a wet, sort of heavy race. There is the forecast for some rain on the Sunday, but it's super dry over there at the moment, so I think the course is going to be dry, even with some kind of rain on the day. But a heavy sort of muddy course, I think, will just favour guys like Wout and Ganna, who've just got that raw, like, huge power. But in terms of without the weather or the crash, how do you beat Pogacar? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Mathieu van der Poel knows. It's hard to see because given his team is super deep as well, so teammates don't kind of provide as much benefit at Roubaix as at other races, but still they've just got so many options and so much support for Pogacar that it's hard to see how to get around him.
Yeah, it's not like they could just make it hard for UAE, can they? It's not like the other teams could just make it too hard for UAE. It's because that's what they do. That's their job, right, Hoodie?
In terms of how to beat Pogacar, I think you'll see a lot of teams try to anticipate. That's been the whole talk with Pogacar. How do you try to beat him? Try to get up the road ahead of him, and then try to hope to have the legs to hang on. And we've seen Roubaix is kind of one of these races where we do kind of see these outside winners every once in a while. I mean, the last 20 years, we've seen guys like Matt Hayman, Stuart O'Grady, who was the guy on EF? I forgot his name right now. So you see these, kind of random riders that have the experience. They do Paris-Roubaix year after year after year. They love the race. They know how to race it. They know how to get through the most difficult sectors. So you can kind of get these miracle winners, kind of one-offs every 5, 7, 8 years. I really don't see that scenario playing out this year. I think we've seen so far this year really, who's the only rider who can stay with Pogacar when he accelerates. It's really Van der Poel, and Ganna was very good at on the Cipressa and the Poggio. Of course, Roubaix is flat, right? There's no climbs, so the raw power of those guys, I think, will kind of balance out the explosiveness of what Pogacar brings, right? So I think Pogacar will, try to attack, blow up the race early. I think he'll try to go follow the right wheels, but also try to accelerate and make some differences when he can. So how do you beat him? I think you just got to stay with him, and you can bring, if you bring Pogi to the line in the velodrome, almost all those guys can beat him in the sprint. Not to
Yeah,
say that
that is
Pogi,
the one weakness.
yeah,
Yeah.
not to say that he doesn't have, like, he has a pretty good sprint, but in a flat, after 6.5 hour sprint, we saw it at San Remo. If you get Van der Poel, Wout, Ganna, all those guys can probably beat Pogacar. Pedersen for sure. All those guys could probably beat him in a sprint. So how do you beat him? You just stay with them, take it to the line in the velodrome, and try to wind up your sprint.
Last time we chatted, I asked you a question about riders from other teams working together to beat a specific rider. And I know it doesn't really work out like that, obviously. Like these teams are working together, but this is that sort of scenario where, I just picture it being like 50K left and it's those 4 or 5 heavy hitters. And like, I just picture the four of them, everybody but Pogi, like looking at each other and being like, we have to just smash this guy. Like, they have to work together in a way, which I think is going to be pretty neat. Tim, what do you think about Wout, sorry, and Visma? How are they doing?
Well, Wout is fine. Is coming good. He's off the back of two really big injuries last year, and at Flanders, I mean, he missed the podium, but he was kind of the winner of the day that didn't win, because he's all spring he's been really off the back and been getting a lot of criticism, especially like from Belgian press, where it's very sort of boiler, kind of a cauldron atmosphere. But I think Roubaix is the race best suited to him of all the monuments. It's a big kind of high tempo race. It's not so much about the explosivity on the climbs and things, and I think that's what Wout's all about. But I was talking to Hoodie earlier, and Visma doesn't actually have as good a classics team for Roubaix as it did for, say, Flanders. Like Matteo Jorgensen, he's not racing because he's gone, he's getting ready for the Tour. Tish Benoot, who's another really good, like, all-round classics guy, he's getting ready for the Ardennes. They've had loads of injuries and things. So I'd say Wout has got a genuine sort of podium chance, but it's not going to be as easy for him as it would have been, say, 2 years ago when he was in top form and he had a really strong team. So I think everybody would like to see him on the podium. Can he do it? Maybe. I wouldn't bet too much on it.
Have you guys seen a picture of his knee? What his knee looks like?
Yeah, insane.
He he looks like he was in like it looks like he put his knee into like a meat shredder or something like that. Like, oh my Lord. Personally, like I do want to see Pogi win. I admire the dominance. I think that is like, everybody says this, we're seeing something right now that we haven't seen for many, many decades. So I do want that, but I think that like it would be so feel good if Wout took that for sure. Hoodie, I want to ask you about the women. They're racing on Saturday. How do you think that's going to play out? Who are the heavy hitters?
Yeah, Saturday's supposed to be sunny, dry, so it's going to be a very fast race. I'm not quite sure which way the wind's going to blow that day. The wind's always a factor at Roubaix, and it always kicks up. It doesn't really, what the forecast say, it's that last hour, the wind will always kick up. It's always a factor in the men's race and the women's race. I mean, this race is so hard, so demanding, so selective that it's always going to be just like the men's race. It's always going to be the top heavy hitters. Kopecky is going to be, Elisa Longo Borghini won't be there. But, it's like the Kopeckis are going to be out there. She wants to win. She's in the rainbow jersey. But for me, I want to see Pauline Ferrand-Prévot really have a
Yes.
good race. I mean, come on. I think she's great. I mean, she
Yeah.
had a great Flanders. I mean, she's had a great transition to the road season. I think her first race was UAE Tour, kind of got blown out on the first mountaintop finish. Fair enough. She hadn't been racing on the road
There
like
were
in
some shit
5 years.
talkers about that, Hoodie. Some people were talking
Yeah,
shit about that, but I have faith in the mountain bikers.
exactly. I mean, she is really, she is kind of like the Vanderpool, right? I mean, or Marianne Vos is the same way. These riders that can win in all disciplines, that can cyclocross, mountain bike, gravel, road. She's done it all. So I'm a huge fan of hers, just from the old mountain biking days. I used to cover mountain biking before road racing, and she's great. So I think she's gonna have a great race just because of her bike handling skills, right? She won't be intimidated. I think she'll have the best setup. She has the experience, so my money's on her.
I
Yes.
would say the same for Puck Peters as well, in terms of that multi-discipline. She's really like young and explosive, quite aggressive. She won't be sort of intimidated by Kopecky, and I think she could be on for a really good day. And I'm a bit of a kind of a fanboy of hers, just because she makes races exciting. So I'd definitely like to see Puck Peters win.
Guys, if any of those three women end up in the velodrome together, do you picture anybody beating Kopecky on the velodrome, though? I don't think so. I would like to see it, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, she's so
Yeah.
good at the end of a hard race. I mean, she's,
Yeah.
in a classic style race, she's so hard to beat. And she's like better than last year, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's impressed me so far this season, and she had a huge win at Flanders, and I think, she wants to go for the double. Flanders, Roubaix. And then I'm actually excited, not to change the subject here. I'm actually excited to see how well she can do in the Tour de France Femme this year, because last year she skipped it for the Olympics. And then now, of course, Vollering is racing on the rival team. So we'll get back to Roubaix. I'm actually excited to see her race at the Tour de France this year as well.
All sorts of drama going on. All sorts of drama. I love it. Yeah. It's going to be good, boys. It's going to be good. Okay. We've talked about some possible winners. What about some outsiders? For the men first, I think the top of my list, I guess he's not really an outsider, but the top of my personal outsider list would be Mads Pedersen. I don't know. He's not an outsider, I guess. I think that's probably a pretty weak choice. Um, just because I'm going to sound like a dick, but like next to Vanderpool and Wout and those guys, I don't know. I just don't see it happening. But what about you? What do you think for outsiders for the men first?
I would have to say that you're wrong about Mads being an outsider, Mike. I'm sorry. This
Yeah,
year,
he's not.
this year you've got to say he's a favourite. In terms of outsiders, I guess two guys who are always nearly there but never quite are Jasper Stoven, who won San Remo in 21, and he's got a habit of finishing like fourth or fifth in these big races, but he had a really good day in Flanders. And another guy who's just unfortunately like he's always like sixth or maybe fourth is Stefan Kung, uh,
Yes.
who's
Yes.
just he just I think like wow, everybody would love to see him at least just get a podium, because he's like the most consistently unrewarded good rider in the peloton, I think.
Yeah, that's a good choice. That is way better choice than Mads, who is not an outsider. Cody, what about you?
Yeah, those are kind of my outsiders too. I mean, Biniam Girmay is going to race Roubaix for the first time. He's a tough rider, and he can go the distance. And so if he's in there in any sort of group, he'll have the finishing speed. But personally, I don't think there's any outsiders this year. There's too many ballers. You got Pogacar. He is just going to throw down. Vanderpool is going to want to make up for missing out on Flanders. You got Wout. You got Mads. I think it's going to just be like a heavyweight bout. There's going to be no pretenders to this Roubaix throne this year. I think it's going to be kind of a 5-star brawl all the way to the end. It's going to be, I think, a fantastic race.
We are in for a banger. So before I let you guys go, Jim, I want to ask you first. Your ideal Paris-Roubaix, how does it play out? Give me a brief couple-minute breakdown.
Say Carrefour de l'Arbre is where it No, sorry, the Arenberg is where it all sort of kicks off. Mads, Wout, Van der Poel, Pogacar, and Ganna go away in 5. A few of them drop, maybe Wout and Mads, and then those two work together because they're like, we're not going to let Matthew Van der Poel or Pogacar win, because obviously Wout probably doesn't like Matthew Van der Poel, and they just don't want to see Pogacar win. Pull them back on the velodrome. Somebody does a long range attack. Probably Ganna goes early on the velodrome, and then it all comes down to pretty much a 5-way photo finish on the line. And I'm hedging my bets about who wins.
Yeah, fair enough. What about the women? How do you see the women's race, or how would you like the women's race to play out? Would you like to see a breakaway, or do you want to see it end in the velodrome?
Tough question. I would like to see a breakaway go, like an audacious breakaway from Puck Peters, goes on the final 5-star sector, and even though she's probably one of the least kind of powerful riders, she just fends them all off with her skills.
Yep. Takes leave on Kopecky before they get on the bankings. That's how she's gonna have to do it.
Exactly.
Hoodie, men's race, Hoodie. How's your dream men's race play out?
My dreams men's race. I mean, personally, I would like to see Pogacar not win, simply because I'm a journalist, right? I like to have the good story. So if he doesn't win, it's a better story for next year, because then he has to come back. He has to do it again. Because if he wins, he'll probably never come back to Roubaix. So I love the fact that he's racing, and I have all the respect for Pogacar. He's the best racer I've ever seen covering the sport, 25 years, hands down. Huge respect for him as a person, for him to even take this on. But I hope he doesn't win, just because if he doesn't win, he'll have to come back again at least one more time, and and kind of keep that whole drama of the, because he has this chance to really become the first rider to win all 5 monuments, since the 1970s. So I think that would be a storyline I like to see continue to play out for the next year or two. Just gives Pogi something to chase. For me, my scenario would be, that elite group going, and then just Wout van Aert has diamonds in his legs.
Yes.
Cross wins on the Carrefour, and he just goes, and he doesn't crash, he doesn't get a puncture. He just drops everybody, rides everyone off the wheel, solos home, finishes 5 seconds alone ahead of the 3 guys that are going to fight for the podium.
Tear in my eye right now, Hoodie. Tear in my eye.
Gotta bring it. Gotta go for Wout, man. It's gotta be Wout.
That will be, if it happens, that's a feel-good win that I think a lot of people are going to be a fan of. For me, I'm going to paint a picture for you guys here right now. It is muddy as hell. Everyone is plastered with mud. It's been a super dirty day. 100K out. Who goes? Pogi and Van der Poel together. They're by themselves. They're team time trialing this thing the whole way. They're trying to smash each other multiple times, of course. Pogi's trying to get away before they get to the velodrome. You can't do it. They get to the velodrome together. Pogi goes super early. It's 2 laps of the velodrome. Pogi goes right away. That's the only way he's going to win this thing, and he wins. He beats Van der Poel by like a wheel length or something like that. I think, to me, he crosses the line, and all you see, the white eyes and the white teeth, and he's just brown everywhere.
Love it. I love it.
That's the dream. And then I would like to see PFP get away from Kopecky before the velodrome, because that's the only way that's ever going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Guys, I'm super excited. I'm excited to see your guys' race coverage as well. You're going to be there covering the race. It's going to be one hell of a weekend, both the men's and the women's race. Hopefully we get a little bit of mud on Sunday. It looks like it's going to be dry on Saturday for the women, which is going to be great too. Guys, thank you for talking about Paris-Roubaix with me. I think we covered a whole bunch of stuff. And everybody listening, we hope you guys enjoy the race. Go to the Velo homepage for all sorts of coverage from Jim, from Hoodie, of the races, of the tech, of the bikes, of all the things. There's going to be a ton of photos. Check it out, and make sure to share this podcast with everybody else that likes bike racing. And we'll see you around.